As some of you may know, a little over a week ago now, there was a kidnapping of 3 teenage boys. They were coming home from school, they were at a bus stop, and they were kidnapped. I'm saying the reaction that I'm sure you would have, any normal, sane, civilized person would have, is one of horror and sadness and grief, maybe. Personally, it made me sick to my stomach, and almost as bad as the abduction has hit me has been the responses to the abduction. There was a lot of support for the boys and their families, and there was a lot of hatred directed towards them, which is mind-boggling, I know, but nevertheless, that's what it is. And I have here 2 comments from online that sums up a lot of the feelings that people have about these kids and the kidnapping. One of them is, yes, I wish they'd bring them back, but without their heads. And the other comment I have is, ha 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 ha, this is funny, with like 4 smiley faces. Every time I see a comment like this, and it's pretty often, I don't know what to say. You can see I'm kind of speechless about it. And if that's not enough, a lot of the comments just go down into racial slurs, and they say things like, death to all Zionists, and F Jew scum. So I'm sure the last 2 comments explains why there's any negativity towards the boys and their families, the victims in this case, and why there's such hatred towards them. It's clearly because they're Jews and they deserve it. Right? It's become so natural for the public to blame Israel in anything where Israel is concerned. It's Israel's fault and Israel's to blame. And even when these boys were kidnapped by Palestinian terrorists, it's still somehow Israel's fault. And it's still somehow these boys' fault. Really, the fact that the kids were abducted is the end of the story. Really, my opening statements should be enough for you to feel horror and just overwhelming sorrow for these families. But, as is the case with Israel, it's never enough. It's not the end of the story. There's always more. I'm just going to hit 1 or 2 points that a lot of the comments have brought up, even though it kind of feels that by talking about them, it's legitimizing them in any way, and it's impossible to legitimize so false a claim. But one major comment that has arisen time and time again is a lot of these commenters are equating the abduction of these boys with the arrests of Palestinian kids. There's a 2-fold response to that. One is why these kids are taken. In the case of the Palestinian kids, it's because they're involved in criminal activities such as stoning. And with regards to these boys, they were coming home from school. End of story. There's no reason. If there was a reason, it's because they were Jewish, and by kidnapping them, the terrorists have a political bargaining chip. The second part of that response is how they were taken and what framework they were taken. Again, the Palestinian kids, they were arrested into a civilized legal justice system to answer for their activities. With regards to these boys, they were taken by terrorists. No one knows where they are, no one knows what they'll be, no one knows how long they're going to be gone, their family has no word from them. A second major component of the comments online are just blaming the victim. They're saying that the kids are racist, that they're fanatics. These are regular kids. These are the kids that you know in your life. They're just average kids going about their day, trying to go home from school. That was their big agenda for the night. They wanted to go home. Lastly, just a final aspect about blaming the victim. People are saying, why are these boys hitchhiking? They were coming home, they were hitchhiking to go home. It's the same thing as blaming a rape victim for being a rape victim. Why was she raped? She was raped because she was a woman. End of story. Why were these kids kidnapped? They were kidnapped because they were Jews. End of story. Why was that woman in that neighborhood wearing what she was wearing? Why were these kids in the neighborhood? Why were they hitchhiking? Why were they doing that? It doesn't matter why they were doing that. It doesn't excuse the act. Does it excuse they let the rapist go? Oh, she shouldn't have been there. He had a right to do whatever he wanted. No, he didn't have a right. You don't have a right to do whatever you want just because you feel like doing it. You can't excuse a kidnapping just because a person might have reasons that are illegitimate, by the way. But besides for that, I'm trying to keep that out of the video. You can't just excuse a kidnapping. You can't. So, think about the kids in your life. If you're a kid, think about yourself, your friends, your classmates. If you're not a kid, think about your son, think about your nephew, think about your neighbor next door, and think about them. If they were taken by terrorists and you haven't heard from them, and you don't know if they're alive, and you don't know if they're dead, you don't know if they're hurting, and you don't know if they're hungry. You don't know anything. Because who knows what those people are capable of. So, I hope you'll join me in wishing that we bring back our boys.
אדוני ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם.